So, welcome everyone to another episode of Life That Said Yes Conversations. And today I'm joined by Satu Palokangas. Satu is a somatic activist, practitioner, therapist, facilitator, and a pioneer in eco-somatics with over 30 years of training in movement, anatomy, improvisation, therapy, and pedagogy. She is a body-mind centering practitioner and teacher, Infant Developmental Movement Educator, Laban Bartenieff Movement Analyst, Dynamic Embodiment Practitioner, and an ISMETA registered somatic movement therapist and educator. Welcome, Satu.
Thank you. Thanks. It's nice to be here. It's interesting to hear how and what somebody picks from that bio from online. But lovely to be introduced.
And there are a lot of these titles, which points out to a life dedicated to this field, life dedicated to somatics.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. What I hear maybe in that is the ongoing question that leads us as we practice this work. That's what I feel and hear when you go through that list. I think there was something missing from there, but I'm not gonna. Probably. I don't need to name it, but it's that sense of which I know exploring.
Exactly. And when I was preparing for this interview, I remembered that you were a part of my very first body-mind centering training in Fusam that you also remembered. Yeah, and just made me go back a little bit in my thoughts to that time. It was 2019, and just looking at this period of 6 years of somatic exploration and having a little revision of my own self and realizing how much in these 6 years has this somatic work changed me in every way, in physical, mental, emotional, changing my worldview. So when you go back and you look at this whole process, which is of course ongoing, what would you say are the most positive things that this somatic practice has done for you?
What it's given me. It's given me my livelihood. It's given me some sort of an orienting compass. It's given me community. It's given me lots of deep friendships. And I think that's one of maybe the most important things, like a found family that came through this work. And I was thinking this morning before we started that sometime I remember very specifically, sometime maybe when I was doing my Laban studies, that I felt that the reason for me to do this work was the question of how to support change. So not so much about what do I get from this, but how can I serve? How can I support change in the world? Not just in individuals, but really in communities and in society. That's a big thing. I've maybe found some further pieces into that question, but those are the things, like really a place of service in this world, which feels really important to have what motivates me, what keeps me centered and grounded and oriented toward the unknown future. Yeah, that's maybe the first things that come to mind when you ask this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting. This impulse that you had to use it to change.
Yeah.
Because it usually, I feel maybe not for all people, but it's usually a desire to change oneself,
Hmm.
a desire to come to, more wholeness, more well-being.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, certainly that must be part of it, because that's how, I mean, we can only change when we recognize the change within. Like when I know what's being proposed by this work or the practices. But I don't know how I'm, maybe, maybe there's some sort of personal wiring of what I find important, which is that, my feeling as a human being in this world, especially in these moments that we are living through right now, is there's so many questions, there's so much unknown, there's so much unsettledness. So if there's anything that I can do to support, and we can talk about further what kinds of things this work can support, but I find that a bigger question than just doing this work for myself.
Right. Right.
Or yeah. But obviously it's, that's often the starting place. That's what takes us into the practice. There's an injury or an issue or a question or a curiosity that is very, maybe internalized in the physical structure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can totally relate with what you were saying about finding deep friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's also one thing,
Yeah.
which is kind of like, it's like a byproduct.
Yeah.
But when I look at the whole process with a little distance, then I can say, okay, but this friendship is the most important thing. Like, okay, I got the practices, I got to get to know myself better, I got to develop in a professional way, but in the end, like, this deep friendship and deep contacts which happen are probably the most priceless. And it's funny because these contacts happen in a very short period of time, but very condensed. And due to the transformational nature of the somatic work, going through something like that with someone connects us on a much deeper level.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree on that. It's also what I think about some of the friends that I've met in the training or having been a student. It's like almost like resonating around a question and feeling the shared question that I have with this person, and recognizing that together we can keep asking this, that it actually, the relationship is the primary kind of leading edge for me in this work. So that's, yeah, it's been really important. It continues to be an extremely important support in teaching this work and in sharing this work, is to know that there are these people with whom I can keep asking the questions and keep checking in with, what they think, or what am I missing, or like really trusting their presence and their bodily wisdom. And that's the kind of friendship that I feel like that I've always longed for, is that resonance of and the willingness to be in a question together. So in this work, I think that's what has assisted finding the depth in the friendship. Yeah.
And what would you say is the importance of understanding somatic practices and processes as an open process, which doesn't have a concrete final goal, but it's an open exploration which keeps growing and adding up and questioning and
I mean, you're basically answering there already. In a way, I think that my task as an educator is to support and create and hold a field for the participants or the students or the clients to be exploring in the moment, and like that the work is created in the moment in those relationships. And my task is to sort of hold the space for that exploration, not so much lead specifics in the material, which is of course also important, but that for me shouldn't be the first thing I go into the room with. I go into the room with the intention to hold the space for that learning and that change and that exploration. So that for me is what somatic work or practice for me means. It's not the material or the things that we find, even the principles, though the principles are, exquisite and can orient our explorations. But really that question for me is, and it's always, because it also takes me into the place where I don't know, where I don't hold the answer, where I don't go with, I need you to learn this thing, but I go with kind of an offering and a desire to find something out myself. Like that every moment something is being presented is a moment when something is being found for the first time. And in a new way, and in a way where I also as a facilitator get to learn and be held. That's really important to me.
Yeah, beautiful. So in a way, teaching and holding space becomes a really open, creative process, which is happening in the moment.
With the specific people and their specific histories and their curiosities and whatever they bring into the room. So the pathways to, to what we find or how a certain principle sort of arises or emerges is really unknown. And I think, that's like every time I teach, I feel a little bit nervous because I cannot, like there's some way of, I have to not know so that I don't guide it at least too much. And that it can sort of feel real for the students or for the client or for anyone who I'm working with, or that it's really an alive event, that we are not sort of trying to find what everybody else has found before us, or kind of go through a list of things. But how can it be an in the moment experience of knowing something?
And that's what makes it truly interesting.
Oh yes, yeah.
That in the end we don't get caught up in preset patterns and ideas and rigid structures or pre-planning, but the ability to just be free with it.
Yeah. I mean, that's my desire. That's my hope. That it's not always maybe that easy, because maybe the expectation in the students is just give me the answer, just tell me what it is, like let's move through like something. But I hope that, and from my experience, is that when we really truly rest and learn to find that field that we create together as a sort of community of explorers, it becomes something bigger than the material itself. So yes, I mean, the ways to get there are always slightly different, and it always is about how do I meet myself with this set of people and their questions right in this moment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that this is also a process of repatterning basic ideas of how we learned to learn in school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which was always oriented towards getting the answers.
Yeah, for sure.
My experience of the school system.
Yeah.
So having this open system for me was, wow, like this is it.
Yeah. I think I had a bit of a head start with that because I went to Waldorf school or Steiner school. I don't know what it is called. So a lot of the pedagogy in that environment is set around giving the space for the children to explore the concepts or I remember learning color theory in this really experiential way that, still sits in my body so many decades later as a really living experience of color. And I think it was also like some of these early childhood experiences that when I met BMC, it just felt like, oh yes, here it is again, after having then gone through some other educational experiences that certainly just felt dry and painful and almost like drawing, like really squeezing out the life out of the material. So yes, the BMC has that capacity to also repattern the ways we have learned to come into. So the learning is not so much about putting things on top of each other, but almost like unraveling and I'm trying to look for the right English word, but exposing, taking away the things that we think we need to hold ourselves up, external structures and to come into that living experience of this is what something feels like. This is what my tibia feels like. This is what how my heart is expressing in this moment. This is what my blood tells me right now. So yes, certainly it is a pedagogical question and also really important reason to why I want to be teaching this work.
Mm-hmm. For me, it's giving back the power to the individual.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
Because if we invite somebody to actually feel themselves in their own way and have their own experience, it's like this person has an opportunity to reclaim a certain part of themselves.
Certainly. And also that it is also not an individual responsibility to figure it out. That there's something about the learning that is shared. That when somebody has an experience, it also is part of I can learn something from that. So I don't need to know everything because there are enough other perspectives into that question that together create this sort of widened perspective of what something can be.
Mm-hmm.
So while it gives power to the individual, I feel it also gives, I wonder if power is the word I want to use, but it gives agency to the group to learn to recognize that everybody is responsible in creating and participating in the question, that it requires its participation, that we can know more about this thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think that's maybe that is slightly even more important, if I can say so. That group experience, like learning to really rest in the support of others.
Mm-hmm.
That it takes away some sort of, oh, I have to do this on my own, and perhaps this comes from, somewhere from my own educational journey where it felt like I was alone responsible for knowing something. And it's a huge responsibility to put on anyone to be the all-knowing person or the
Right.
needing to figure something out. So how can I, also as I teach, how can I let go of part of that sort of pedagogical mind of I as a teacher need to know everything in order to teach this group, because I cannot. There's definitely somebody who knows about something more than I do.
Right.
And I also need to learn to rest and in that support in the room.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And I feel that I sort of notice this rising excitement when I talk about that, because it's such a tangible sense of something emerging in that field. So if I think about a teaching situation and we start exploring a concept or a principle or whatever it is, where I can release some of that individual knowing so that I can also hear what the group is bringing in, so that I can repattern my own previous experiences around this thing.
Right. So, in the developmental movement work, one of the basic principles states how support precedes movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love that.
So, for me, that's a very inspiring concept, which I think really has application in all areas of our life, right?
Oh yes.
Can
Oh
you
yes.
can you share a little bit about this whole idea, what it is and what it is for you and how
Oh
it
my God.
inspires your work?
You're really putting me on the spot here. It's, I mean, like you said, it's over, like, it's that whole principle is so massive, multi-layered, so complex that while it could mean that, earlier developmental patterns are underneath whatever sort of unfolds, each earlier pattern becomes the support for the next one to unfold. It can also mean exactly what we've been speaking about. Where do I sense that something supports me? Be it the gravity or the space or the group or whatever aspect within that group, or even in my own history, that I can find a sense of kind of an orienting support, that I know it, like that support gives me orientation that allows some maybe more novel experience to arise from, something that hasn't quite organized in that way yet. And paying attention to what that support can be, because it could be so many things. And maybe that's what makes this principle so complex, and also, like you said, so useful in so many ways. Yeah, for me, I'm thinking something quite personal, because I'm quite quick. I'm quite spontaneous in my responses at times. And for me to learn to sort of really feel into like what's there, what is there, and how far does it support me? Like, what does it support in me? Because the movement that arises is also in relationship to the support. So that I don't sort of overreach or leap into the unknown future where I would love to go, but really like recognizing that, like how far, how much, what kind of quality can arise from this support right now. And that in itself is a particularly beautiful practice to really learn to recognize what the support allows, like what can rise from, if this is the support I can find or feel right now, what is possible. So I don't know if I did any justice to unraveling this magnificent principle, but
lifetime meditation.
Well, there you go. That's it. It is. It truly is, because every time we even bring that question into the room, it's like, what can it be right now? Yeah. And support, I'm thinking even like in terms of this work and the lineage and all the questions that have already been asked in this field. That's a support for me to be a teacher in this moment. That's what allows my agency, because I can also rest or find that presence of support from so many practitioners that have come before me, so many teachers, so many mentors, so many colleagues. So it's also that recognition that if support precedes movement, then something is continuously moving through. Something is continuously seeking to express.
Right.
And I just need to, to the best of my ability, to let that move through.
Right. Yeah, I really had an image now of this, let's say, unnamed knowledge carrying some importance, which wants to express, which wants to move, and just like expressing and moving in ripples.
Yeah.
Through the vessels of human beings, and in a way it becomes much more important than our own personal
Goodness, yes.
name and whatever. Yeah. It is the vibration that's important, that's like spreading.
Yeah.
We become in a way nameless, even though we can acknowledge the lineage, right? The whole.
Yeah, and I do think it's important to acknowledge the lineage. I do feel it's important to know where the ingredients come from. And at the same time, there is like that, I'm now thinking about the name of your podcast. It's like really that's something much bigger than any of us individual atoms, like something really, and maybe at the best of times when we do this work, it is really about letting something move through us. Right. That isn't about me. That is about how the life is seeking to express itself at this given moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel it's really important then to really remember that from time to time. Remind ourselves about that. Remind ourselves that. Yeah.
About the namelessness, or
About the namelessness, yeah. About the namelessness moving.
yes, yes, about that bigger thing being the more important thing than this individual thing, this individual momentary expression of life. Yeah, which is lovely and beautiful, and also needs to be named and celebrated. And but yeah, that's maybe when I think about the support that precedes movement. The support is almost like a life force.
Right.
Can I feel it? Can I trust its presence? Can I let some of that individual holding, that individual kind of, maybe even, if I may, some ego presence, sort of fall away, so that that something that is more magnificent can be shared and seen. I think that's kind of what we all want in some way.
Right.
To feel supported by that life force.
Right. Beautiful. And it's very synchronistic for me right now, because yesterday there was a class where we were talking a lot about pain and having some chronic conditions and having some issues in the body, like movement wise. And through the whole exploration, in the end, we again came to this, what we were just talking right now, how we can get so stuck on a separate part of us,
Yeah.
that we forgot that it's part of a wider whole, and that the whole can support it.
Yeah.
What happens when we look for this, when we go under,
Yeah.
and look for these moments of support which hold
Yeah.
this place?
Absolutely.
And then as we go down and descend and go to the deeper and deeper support, we come to this life force, and which is like the foundation.
Yeah. Something that cannot be reduced.
Exactly.
Yeah, and this, I mean, yeah, I think this human condition of goodness, the sort of negativity bias of a human, anyways, that we know, we tend to notice that which kind of comes in the way, and I don't want to reduce the fact that there's so much pain in this world, and there's so much suffering that is real and unprecedented, and currently just how humans are inflicting pain on each other. So there's that, but then there's also, I guess, the question, especially in my private practice with clients, is how can I support that which works, that's that which is healthy, that which is somewhat undivided, that if the presence of that can be supported, then perhaps the body will the cells, the kind of life in the cells can sort of reorient it around, not the, and this is a more of an osteopathic principle, but not around the lesion or the pathology, but around health. And I find that to be something that I sort of need to keep reminding myself as I especially as I do client work, and even in teaching, to sort of center myself around.
Right.
And not even that I center myself, but the health or the life force centers me.
Right.
It's not something I can do. It's something I can allow or bring my attention to, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. And I feel it's so much important to refocus on this well-being, to put the well-being in the center.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I noticed there is also a surge of, at least here in Croatia, of a lot of body psychotherapy approaches, which are exclusively trauma centered.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So it's like this growing field where trauma becomes the only lens through which we look at each other.
Yes.
And like this
Yeah.
approach of finding the health, finding the, and it's also something that Bonnie has been talking about in her last series. And like this is a study of well-being, and the
Mm-hmm.
trauma is loud,
Mm-hmm.
but let's focus on what can support.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Exactly.
I feel it's so important.
Oh, yeah, it is so important, because I think even if I think of something like the journey of embryology, that blastocyst sort of traveling to make contact with the uterine wall. I mean, what an incredible thing to have happened, and how much had to go right. How much, and even looking not just through the embryological lens, but how much has gone right for us to be here in this moment. And can I sort of, yeah, let that be present? Decades ago, and before I found BMC, I was sort of found myself meditating a lot for a couple of years, sitting a lot of these silent retreats. And there was I don't remember, something came up where, remember, I just couldn't even close my eyes. Like there was something so strong, like there was something that was happening that felt impossible. Like it felt impossible to be in this human body. And I remember talking with a teacher who sort of told me this story, this Buddhist story about that to be in this human form, to be in this body, is as unlikely as a turtle that swims in a wide open sea and just happens to put its head through this kind of a ring that I don't know, I don't remember what term she used, but like there's something floating on that open wide sea, and the turtle just happens to put its head through that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at the moment when she told this story, it's like, oh my goodness, like that's if I don't know if I want to call it, I mean, it is a miracle. It is a miracle that we're here doing this right now. Just maybe that's the blatant fact that there's nothing given. This is it is
Mm-hmm.
it is the life expressing in the most wonderful and spontaneous and unknown ways. And can I notice that? And not only notice, but really like feel that in myself. So I feel like she taught me something in that moment where I was so desperately trying to get things right and organized and fixed, and kind of like, can I just be whatever I wanted to be in that young age? and to sort of rest in this, like, oh, but isn't this incredible,
Yeah.
this moment right now?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why going back to re-experiencing all these embryological processes is so beautiful and amazing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Gives us back that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Brings us back to this wonder of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this experience where because it is such a, like, the self is just folding, moved by this exquisite currents, and everything, like there's this sense of wholeness, not a separateness. And maybe, if I sort of step just a little bit, because it's really not something I care to talk a lot about, but this, what you brought in about how the trauma also fragments the discussion. It fragments our perception of what this body can be. And I mean, yes, there's trauma, as we've established. There's no question. And that trauma is that something is not in relationship with the rest. And how do we sort of find that relationship? And embryology for me has been one of these practices and kind of research areas and questions where it's really where I feel like the deeper learning is really that support precedes movement. Whatever came, whatever has happened allows this next thing to happen and this next thing to happen. And what it is to feel that, what it is to actually experience that, which has nothing to do with something controlling it from, or, the nervous system controlling it or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. It's nice to talk about this, by the way. Enjoying.
Yeah, beautiful.
Enjoying feeling into this.
I'm interested in this idea of teaching as a vessel.
Sure. Me too. I'm interested in that. Yes.
The moment when I realize that that my mind is getting panicking and trying, I need to say something now.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm really like empty myself, then it's okay. Maybe it's time for silence. Maybe it's time, and then something is coming. What is, in your experience, this interplay between letting go, opening, and like
And the panic.
the panic and controlling and
it's a great question. I mean, yeah, of course. Like I said, I am often, if not always, especially when I meet a new group that I haven't met before. I wouldn't say I'm panicked. That would be too strong of a term. But I'm still like, there's a nervousness because I have to step into the unknown. But I think gracefully and luckily over the years of teaching, I'm trusting that that open space more and more. And if I trust it, then the students also, because somebody might be there on the floor doing a somatization and they are panicking because they have no idea where it's going to go next. And of course, then I could go into some like it is really important to give a framework of where we're about to go so that it holds a container so that the student can feel safe enough to explore, to let something arise. But in that moment, I think what I've learned to know that if I can keep resting in that, keep finding that support, that then the student begins to trust it in themselves as well. Because if I'm panicking, that says something about how my tone might change, how even my voice changes. Like there's some way it's leaking into the room, and that might cause, sometimes that might be an interesting little edge in the room. But I feel it's also about like learning to sort of invite the students into that space where things can, like if the repatterning is that something like a new response or something previously unknown can express itself, I have to give it time. Like something needs to wash away a little bit, like that, almost like that knee-jerk reaction, or that sort of more reflex type of response, or like, oh, you say this, so therefore I do that. And if I can, I'm sure this has been said many times in many ways, but like expand that gap between that impulse and the response. Like if I can really allow, and I'm thinking about maybe what Bonnie calls sitting in the synapse, or some sort of like holding that space. And that's what I feel my task is as a teacher, is to keep like letting that space expand and trusting it and in myself enough so that students can learn to trust. And I sort of invite you to explore that space, because I think the panic is like, well, we're just trying to find an answer. It's like, oh, this needs to go somewhere. I need to know what's going to happen next. But if it's not about what happens next, but what is happening right now in this moment, as I keep sort of dropping and holding and suggesting a little bit more space in here, then what happens? And we don't know that. But I think the panic is, as like you said, the mind is sort of desperately trying to find a back door somewhere. Like, can we just fix this and name this and know this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I said panic, it doesn't have to be something that's spreading. It's really like a second.
I completely understand. I completely understand.
When there is a feeling, oh, I'm not in the flow anymore.
Yeah. And that's okay to not to be in a flow, I think. I feel like that's also really important, that it, where I'm a human, I'm not perfect. Therefore, there are these things, little glitches that may happen. And that's also part, I find that this idea of rupture and repair, that something can feel a little clunky, is also okay. And it should be okay, because we are humans together exploring something. I don't need to go and, there are classes that sometimes feel seamless and kind of beautiful, how they just seem to sort of organize themselves. And then there are certainly classes I've taught where I feel like, oh, this feels a little, but that's okay too. And I've also needed to kind of learn to forgive myself for being a human being, and those mistakes, or what we might consider like, oh, this didn't quite go as I would have hoped. Maybe it was perfect for somebody, that they needed that little misstep, because it reminded them that, oh, they can also make a choice. They don't have to follow my beautifully set up plan, or even if it's not a plan, but like there are sometimes moments when it feels really seamless, but not everybody needs to come with me on that journey, because there's space for them to also find their own response. And I think those moments of little glitch are also useful for the learning experience, for the individual choice, for the freedom of response. Yeah.
Great. And now it just comes to my mind, I don't know if it makes any sense, but when we are talking about this teaching from a very connected place, what is the relation between that and us feeling our central channel?
Interesting questions. I am always, that's maybe where my let me backtrack. I'm wondering if we mean the same thing when you say central channel, and I'm thinking about the midline or the notochord in embryology. It's an orienting structure along, like everything. Once there is that, everything knows where it needs to be or needs to go, or what needs to happen next. It's a signal in the embryo, for it is the support that precedes movement. And now I'm just going to keep using that because we've started with it, but it's such an essential place for me to find myself. It's not the only one. It is. I really, that midline as a process. How it also orients my perceptions, my all of my sense organs. So that's one. I would say that in my teaching, if there's something that I ignite as I begin anything, and also specifically in client sessions, I've sort of ritualistically meet my midline. It's a we could talk more about this, but that's for sure. But the other one for me is my kinesphere, my space that I hold, also in terms of whatever my heart space, this sort of widening in my perceptions as well. So there are these two aspects that I feel like I carry with me as they organize me. They provide me a sense of being connected and supported and aligned and oriented in ways, and contained. That's a really important word. Without me needing to do that. Without me there's no me needed, because those are processes that happen well before the I. So yeah, that's a really, I think, good, interesting pedagogical question, because I would assume that there are teachers who sort of center themselves in so many ways. But certainly for me, every time. And especially when working with clients, every time, ritualistically, in the beginning, before they come, in the beginning of the sessions, during the session. Like it's almost like a tuning fork for me.
Right.
That I can return to, and that may shift something in the session or give a sense give space also for the, and right now I'm thinking client sessions, that really, if I can hold, these are wrong words, I'm not holding anything. If that can be there with me, then that can arise in the client as well.
Mm.
And then, students too.
See, I knew I had to ask this question.
Yes, you did. I'm glad you did ask. It's really important. Not something that I maybe specifically speak about, but yeah. To my students, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I can see that you are really finely attuned to language, and that you are very mindful of the words that you use. And yesterday, when I was going through your website, I came to the Finnish page in Finnish, and I was just looking at the letters, and I was like, oh, this is a completely different code.
Yeah, well, I haven't tried Croatian yet, but I'm sure I would feel the same.
Exactly. But I feel also a part of your work was dedicated to this idea of using somatics as a way of decolonization,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which is also mindful of the way we use language.
Yes.
In somatic, and how we perceive ourselves and the body and all the processes.
Yes.
It's very connected to how we word them.
Yes. And it's so important, and especially when our mother tongue is something else than English.
Mm-hmm.
Because and you probably know this very well, how it's not just about translating the work. It's really about how does this, the whole process for me in teaching in Finnish is, what is the language that arises in sort of conjunction or in connection with this exploration or these principles. And it's really important to me that the work has to, like, I can't just, what is it that I want to say? The translation is more than the words I use. It's also the culture within which that language has developed, and sort of recognizing the landscape, the history, I mean, I've had the most beautiful explorations, let's say something like fluids, when we've been connecting with like the stories of the land, or the kind of the folk history of, let's say, Finland, and the sort of the knowledge of the land, and because words are this is oral history. The words are the vessel through which we carry this work forward. So therefore, I want to be. I don't want to waste the words. I don't want. They really are the vessels. So I also want to, because the medical terminology it also carries its own very specific histories. Mm. So if I use those, I want to understand what's being carried in that term. Like, what's the history of this term, and what do I want to do with it? Or what is required in this moment of time? Can I use it as it is? Or do I need to sort of, and what I love, especially teaching Finnish, is because I feel like we're creating the language of somatics because it doesn't quite exist, and I assume it's the same in Croatian.
Right.
Because we've studied this in English, but I can't just take it sort of, it can't look the same anymore when I take it to somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's, I find it such an incredibly beautiful process to, and also necessity that if we speak, like I feel it's my responsibility as a Finnish speaker, as a Finnish person to really take care of the language that I use, and then what gets used by my students, because I also set something in motion. So I want to sort of really almost insist that the language is an essential part of how we bring this work forward. So therefore, it has to, like even the languaging has to be alive. And it's not that I want my students to use the language that I use, but to recognize that I have a process around it, so that they can find their own process around it. So they don't just mimic me or imitate my words or say what I've said, but like, how does it land in this moment? And maybe something needs to shift a little bit. And I teach a lot of young acting students at the moment in Helsinki. And they are they are Swedish speaking, so the language is continuously a question between us. But they're so versed with these kinds of ideas that they really keep me excited and curious about languaging this work and being really, I don't want to say careful, because I feel like there has to be a sort of, we have to be willing to improvise and make mistakes and sort of in that creation, in that childlike exploration. But it's so, I don't find it a hindrance, or I don't think it's, I think like there's a real delicacy in the finding the right language. And I hope at least some of my students enjoy it as much as I do. Because language is also something that arises in the moment. It is, as you know, this work can be really poetic. And rather than kind of poetic in a way of like, oh, let's just, like that, as if the poetry diffuse, like the poetry can be the vessel for the essence. In a way. And I want the essence to be really clear, to be really potent, almost like medicine. So, yeah. And the decolonizing aspect is really that there is, I feel like every time I teach, there is a little bit of checking in of what do I bring forward that doesn't need to go forward anymore? Like, what is it in, like, is there a term that I'm using that really carries some questionable history? And this is maybe something that I've, like in Finnish, there are 3 or 4 words for body. And I've sort of been for, many, many years really figuring out like what body is the body that I want to be speaking about, because they all come from a slightly different sort of linguistic or historical.
Would you mind sharing the words?
Not at all. There is a word that I use when I speak about the body, the somatic body, is ruumis. And ruumis is has been considered it at some point became to mean the dead body. But really, for me, it's the body that both holds the life and the death. That's why I love the word, like there's space in that term. Then there is a word called keho, which was actually created for the medical use in the 40s. So it's a kind of a medical terminology that became to denote a living body. But it was a made up word for the use of the doctors. And for me, there's something about this word keho, which actually it's almost like we're talking about the outline of a body, like and that's why and it's used a lot in body work, in body-based practices. That word comes up. And I've sort of adamantly been pushing this other term in there. I mean, I've been really quite strong with my choice, ruumis, because I don't want to talk about the outline of the body. I want to talk about the process of the body.
Right.
And then there's a third word that is kalmo, which means the dead body. And, it's one of these kind of old words that people over time have forgotten that it exists. But there is a third word for the actual deceased form. And then there are words like vartalo, which is more about I don't know. I don't even know how to translate it, but it wouldn't be. I don't know. It's a little bit objectifying the body, and also just to backtrack. Sorry, you asked me a question that I have a lot to say, but the keho, the word for the body that is used a lot, is something that can also be, it's the one kind of body that one can sort of control. So you can go into the gym and build some muscle, or you can go under a knife and change the appearance of the outline of the body. But the ruumis, the body word that I want to use, is the thing that you cannot quite control. That is really about the process, and that's why I've been shifting the language. And in my teaching, I pretty consistently only use the one that speaks about the process of the body. So that's
Beautiful.
one.
Super interesting for me.
Yeah. I wonder in Croatian how many words do you have for body, or do you have
only one? Tijelo.
Tijelo. Interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if there are others.
Maybe there are some other words which are not used so often. I will check that. Now I'm inspired to look in.
Please do.
Because one of my desires is to bring forth the language of somatics in Croatian, because it's a novelty field, and there are not very many texts about it or writings about it. So it's very new. It's very new. And everybody is so used to English, pretty much use English freely. But I feel it's important to give it also an identity.
Oh, absolutely. And it is, my students keep telling me that the experience of doing this work in their mother tongue, because it sort of hits sometimes some early places, and that's part of the repatterning. Because in English, the experience could stay a little bit external, a little bit outside of
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some of the, yeah, I find it really important because it also gives, this work, it can find almost like I don't want to say new identity, but another expression that in English, the words have their own limitations because they arise from a certain culture, from a certain history, from a certain set of questions. So, and if we bring this work to a different land, like how does it really, what is that relationship about?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I would like us to talk a little bit about ecosomatics.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to start with a quote that you put on your website.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes, "You didn't come into this world. You came out of it like a wave from the ocean. You are not a stranger here." And it is a quote by Alan Watts.
Mm-hmm.
And he is one of my favorite philosophers. I had a Alan Watts phase in my life.
I think we all have had, yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think that quote has been there for a long time. I sadly, sadly, I just don't have time to update things these days, but it's been there for at least 15 years or at least 10. But it's still, even when you read it, I'm like, yes, that's it. That's what the experience is that I hope for my students to have
Right.
when, when we're exploring, and specifically when we're exploring the ecosomatic aspect of somatics.
Yeah. And it's talking about it's this reminder of wholeness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so many of these old teachings, which are slowly fading away, I hope, are always trying to put us in this position of separation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That we are either separated from nature or separated from each other,
Mm-hmm.
separated from God as
Mm-hmm.
some,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
external authority.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always this undermining of our wholeness and connection and trying to
Yeah.
fragment
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And this is just like the very essence of, like, I'm not separate.
Yeah.
I am the wave. I am the
Yeah.
drop of the sea
Yeah.
in the ocean.
Yeah. Yeah. I sort of insist maybe these days that if I that the self, that the relationship is primary, and then self that arises from that relationship is secondary. So there's I sort of, maybe what my insistence is that there is, and I'm certainly not the first person or the only person. I sort of just want to name that, the way I found my way into ecosomatics was out of desperation. At some point, I felt like even in early, when I was studying dance, going into the studio meant that I had to leave something outside the door. I had to go into the dance studio to do the practice or to do the technique class, almost as only a part of me could be there. This is what I felt the expectation was.
Mm.
And it wasn't it didn't feel real. It didn't feel. I didn't understand, why am I doing this if I cannot be here as a whole being. And in that question sort of, for me, leaked into the somatic practice, because as I got to know it initially, there can be a lot of somatic classes where you go and I don't know, do something to feel better, so that then you can go and live your life. And that also felt like something like it felt fragmented, or and then I started to question in my own early teaching, like, why am I teaching inside these studios? Like, what does the space that I choose to practice in, how does it affect the practice itself, and what's being left out? Mm-hmm. And so there were like, I really, I hit some, I sort of remember very specifically a time I studied performance, and I didn't understand why I was performing. Like, I had this moment of like, I don't know why I'm doing this. It made no sense. I had no reason to go in front of the audience anymore.
Right.
And it was, I still, when I talk about it, I remember it so clearly, because it felt like I had lost, like I didn't know where was I going with this performance practice? Why did I want to perform? And then this was like early 2000s, and there was already, Andrea Olsen's Body on Earth had already come out. She's never used the word eco-somatics, maybe more recently, but back then it was more the somatic work, but she was really like, there was something about that. And then I studied with Anna Halprin, who a lot of the practices, we were in the trees, in the forest, like around her studio, there used to be these old stumps of redwood trees. And I remember like being inside them, and I felt like this is how I want to practice this work. I grew up in the forest. That's where I sort of got to the trees were, and still they're extremely important companions to my life. So in a way, the naming of ecosomatic, whenever it came, 2008, the term came, and I was like, this is it. This gives a sort of a title to how I'm working already, and how I want to be working. And it's been, yeah, I find that work is also, it's kind of infused itself, or it's everywhere. It's in all my teaching. I cannot really separate one from the other. I think that would be a ridiculous thing, especially when we talk about how important it is to name and acknowledge and witness that relationship between things. But it is that sense of being off the world, having this, there's also, when I go back into the support precedes movement, this whole evolution, if we talk about lineage, like, let's talk about lineage, like this whole, everything that has happened and needed to happen, and all the possibilities, and here I am, here we are, like really, it is a perceptual practice first and foremost, which I think BMC is as well, and it is this sort of deeply acknowledging that support from the world, the cells, the bacteria, the whole pathways of how we got here. Depth perception is, certainly not my term, but something that I held on to as I began to sort of put together how it could be when I teach ecosomatics, which I have to say is now since a couple of years, it was put into curriculum in the theater school that I teach in Helsinki. So I'm kind of, after decades of sort of poking and questioning and wondering, and I had no idea what I was doing, putting things together, and now it's in the curriculum of the acting program in the theater school in Helsinki. So it's, took its time and still is, taking its time, but it's quite lovely to recognize that that there are these moments when things sort of consolidate, and there's I'm thinking about the professor of the program really saw that this is a practice that we want to give to our students. So I answered all kinds of things you didn't even ask. But
can you speak a little bit more about this connection with the trees that you have?
I love trees. I feel them. There was time when I was really like laying my hands on trees to like feeling their being, their energy, their presence. And I have some forests in Finland that are like, I go there to know myself. I feel held. I feel, they're my kin, the non-human kin. They are, goodness, there's so much, I lived in California for some years, and I lived near Yosemite, the national park, close to these big, massive trees. They were, I seek trees wherever I go. That's just, I don't know how to, my dad's a forester. Maybe that's why. So there's he's much better with trees than I am in terms of, I'm too urbanized these days. But yeah, there. That it feels funny to talk about it because it feels like I'm exposing a secret that I hold. But I do really I live in Berlin, and there have been times when I've needed support, and I would go to the park and find a tree, and that would somehow sort me out because that was. If we talk about midlines, let's talk about trees. If we talk about just letting something express, like all that fluidity of, I could talk endlessly about trees. I don't know if I have much to say, but right. I sort of recognize that many times when I've moved to a new place, which is a lot of times in my life, I often go and find that tree that sort of becomes, something that feels constant enough in this world of change, and something that is, especially as I've been moving so much in my life, the sort of rootedness of trees is also something I need to remind myself of. So, yeah, the short of it is, they're extraordinary.
Exactly.
I could talk to you about specific trees, but there's definitely a kinship I've built with trees since childhood. So I think that's maybe underneath.
Oh, I'm asking because I myself I'm fascinated by this relationship
Mm,
with trees in particular.
mm,
And I grew up, I would say, pretty much separated from nature.
mm,
So in a very urban environment with trees all around, but nothing to really nurture a genuine connection with.
yeah.
Until years later, where I had a very dear group of friends, and we would meet every couple of months in a really beautiful forest area in
Mm,
Croatia. And
mm-hmm,
we would do
mm-hmm,
these shamanic drumming ceremonies, drumming all night. But then always the part of these meetings where we take a certain time and we go to the forest, and there
mm-hmm,
I learned to kind of to open myself to the
mm-hmm.
intelligence
Yeah,
of these beings.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
it was just like so clear and so experientially 100% without a doubt that it's a living entity
Oh,
with the spirit with the and of course it's a forest and it's a connected, but
mm-hmm,
the trees are different, and some of
yeah,
them are special and some of them are special in their own way, but it's a different kind of
yeah.
it's like some of them are really like they have a personality, a being
Oh, yeah.
attached to it.
Yes. Yeah.
And then some of them invite you and call you,
Mm-hmm,
and they can provide answers, they can provide solace, they can provide
mm-hmm.
energetic cleaning
Yeah, yeah,
connection,
yeah.
like so many of these different things. And I feel it's also important to mention it in the context of somatics and ecosomatics. If we are doing this work, how open we are to open fully to the real multiplicity of life
Mm-hmm.
and its
Yes,
various expressions, and not just
yes.
keep it on a basic anatomical scientific
Yeah,
level.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. And just the kind of life-giving fact of the this organism couldn't function without the trees, without everything that they provide in terms of oxygen and and the kind of the intelligence of that whole system of not just the tree but its surroundings, the roots, the fungi, the like the whole like the forest as an organism that also supports this this being that I am, this emergence of self that um, I sort of identify with is yeah I it feels I don't want to sort of I don't want to reduce this to be like, oh, I have this tree, but I really feel like they have been um, they are my teachers, and that's like their intelligence is beyond mine, and it is like it is my duty to try to at least open toward that and see what it is that I can learn from their presence, because they've been here longer than I am. They will be here when I'm gone. Like there's something about the also the continuity, even underground, of trees and um, yeah, yeah. I they are my medicine as well. It's undoubtedly essential for if we talk about well-being and how I need to resource myself so that I can do this work, which is kind of like the trees are there so that I can go and teach a group, or I
Right.
teach a group and then I find the tree. There's some sort of symbiosis, symbiotic relationship that I am in with these trees, and I want to acknowledge it and name it and not make it sound too woo-woo, because it is very practical. Like in a very practical level,
Right.
they ground me in this world and also into this work
Mm-hmm.
and all its expressions.
Right. And help the transformation of the cycle.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. I would like to read one of your quotes from the website.
Mm-hmm.
I love it so much, and I would like to end with it.
Mm.
And it's connected to what we were just saying. He wrote, "A lot of our pain, depression, sense of isolation comes from a loss of contact with the natural forces." And also, in short, ecosomatics is my prayer and my practice. There are no set answers, no knowns. But there are the tissue of the body, the intelligence of the cells and the molecules of water, flowing through all forms of life. Tracking these aspects sensorially within myself and others can lead us to places of deeper connectivity. There we can begin to heal. I think it's just a beautiful poem.
Mm. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's still there because I still feel like it expresses um, what I sort of hesitating saying believe, but what I feel is true, and to remind myself that this vessel, this body, is a momentary expression of life, and may we all do justice to this incredible vessel that we've been given, and also that we can, especially in these times. And I feel like there was a point, and I try to be short because I know we have to end, but there was a point in my, like maybe 30 years ago, when I thought, oh, if I work with change is going to happen and things are going to be better. And I, I've learned better now. There is just, I can do that. I can offer. I can truly put this vessel into the service of the whole, because that's what I feel is needed, and from us as humans. But it wouldn't be here without that connection with, I am not separate. We are not separate. So I hope we keep remembering that, and there's something left for our children and our children's children, and thank you, Laban.
Thank you, Satu. Do you want to add something?
Oh, it's not useful to talk with me because I could always add something. I love this. I love conversations like this, to see what arises when people meet and are willing to hear each other, and yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah, that sort of supporting that relationship and that meeting is really what this practice continues to be about. And it can be perceived in so many ways. It can express in so many ways, and all of those ways are important, because that's I think with this work, the sort of sense of diversity, that it's really about creating more choice, creating more possibilities, and life, creating more life in this world.
Right. And inspiration and hope and all of it.
Yeah.
And I feel inspired. I feel very much inspired now after this talk. And I don't know, it's just listening to you, and it's like parts of me start to light up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
In this positive feeling.
Yeah.
This positive feeling, and also feeling how in the context of the whole, just by having these conversations and creating a space for them and how they're alive and vibrant, I can feel that the change has happened, that it is different. And what we were saying before, like, okay, trauma is loud and there is still so many painful places. But I don't know, when I open my heart, I feel positive.
Yeah. 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 I completely agree. And I find that I feel that too. And I feel like that's what we are out here to do, where that inspiration, that expanding that curiosity, that opens a new pathway for so that we can motor something, we can act something, we find the agency to be in relationship with the world. Yeah, that's what this work is about, at least for me. But I also that field that we open when we step into the question together. So thank you for hearing and inspiring and asking questions and opening the space.